The crystal chandelier above me cost more than most people's cars, but I was scrubbing champagne stains off the marble floor beneath it like some kind of Cinderella reject. My name is Hayden, and 3 hours ago my mother-in-law handed me a black uniform and told me I'd be serving at tonight's charity gala. Not attending, serving. It'll be good for you, Victoria had said, her smile sharp as broken glass. A lesson in humility. You'll understand where you really belong in this family. I should have laughed, should have told her exactly where she could shove her lesson. Instead, I took the uniform and said nothing, because that's what I always do. That's what I've been doing for 3 years of marriage to her precious son, Luis. The Lane family mansion buzzed with pre-party chaos. Caterers rushed past me carrying silver trays. Florists adjusted arrangements that cost more than my old apartment's monthly rent. And somewhere upstairs, my husband was probably getting dressed without a care in the world. Hayden! Victoria's voice cut through the noise like nails on a chalkboard. The champagne flutes need to be polished again. I can see water spots. I looked at the glasses I'd already cleaned twice. They were perfect, but I picked up the cloth anyway. Of course, I said. Kendall, Louisa's sister, walked into the kitchen carrying her designer heels. She paused when she saw me hunched over the sink. This is really happening? She asked quietly. Apparently. She shifted uncomfortably. Look, I tried to talk to Mom about this. It's too much, but not enough to actually stop it. Kendall's face flushed. You know how she gets. Once she's made up her mind, save it. I dried another glass that didn't need drying. We both know you're not going to cross Victoria. None of you ever do. She left without another word. The thing is, I used to fight back. When I first married Luis, I had fire. I'd call out their little comments, their convenient memory lapses when it came to including me in family photos, their way of talking around me like I was furniture. But then there was Paisley to think about. My little sister, brilliant and broke, depending on me to keep her in college. And Luis, who'd pull me aside after every confrontation with those puppy dog eyes. Can't you just ignore them? He'd say. They'll come around eventually. You're making it harder on yourself. So I stopped fighting, started swallowing the insults with my dinner, smiled when Victoria introduced me as Luisa's wife to people I'd met a dozen times, pretended not to notice when they seated me at the kids' table during family gatherings. The kitchen door swung open and Luis appeared, looking like he'd stepped off a magazine cover in his custom tuxedo. He spotted me in the uniform and winced. Hey, babe. He kissed my cheek, quick and distracted. You okay with all this? I stared at him. Am I okay with being turned into the help at my own family's charity event? It's just for tonight. Mom thinks. I know what your mother thinks. He loosened his bow tie, already looking for an escape route from this conversation. Look, just play along, okay? For me, it'll be over before you know it. Play along, like this was all some harmless game instead of 3 years of systematic humiliation finally reaching its crescendo. Sure, I said. I'll play along. He smiled, relieved, and headed back upstairs to finish getting ready. Probably to meet up with his family and laugh about poor little Hayden, so grateful to be included that she'd wear a maid's costume to prove it. What none of them knew, what none of them had ever bothered to find out, was that the trust fund I'd inherited from my estranged father didn't just pay for Paisley's education. It had been quietly funding their entire lifestyle for years. The foundation, the house, the cars, the designer clothes Luis wore so casually, all of it, mine. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Corey's number. He was the foundation's legal counsel, and more importantly, he was the only person who knew the truth about where the Lane family money really came from. Have everything ready for tonight, I texted. His response came back immediately. You sure about this? I looked around the kitchen where I'd spent the last hour being treated like hired help in my own home. Thought about Louise upstairs, probably already forgetting this conversation. About Victoria, who was about to parade me around like a trophy of her own superiority. Absolutely. Tonight was going to be a lesson in humility, all right, just not for the person Victoria thought. The ballroom glittered like something out of a fairy tale, if fairy tales included humiliating your daughter-in-law for sport. I weaved through the crowd carrying a tray of champagne, the black uniform making me invisible to people who'd shaken my hand at dinner parties just months ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was serving drinks bought with my own money to people who wouldn't spit on me if I was on fire. "Excuse me, miss." A woman in diamonds grabbed a glass without looking at my face. "These are a bit warm." I recognized her voice immediately. Sarah Mitchell. We'd been in the same finance program at university. She'd borrowed my notes for 2 semesters. "I'll get you a fresh one," I said, keeping my voice steady. She glanced up, and for a split second I saw recognition flicker in her eyes. Then she looked away quickly, pretending she hadn't seen. "Thank you," she said, already turning back to her conversation about summer homes in the Hamptons. At the far end of the room, Victoria held court near the auction display, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her smile practiced and cold. She caught my eye and made a subtle gesture toward a group of men near the bar who were holding empty glasses. I walked over, tray extended. "Champagne? Well, well." The voice belonged to Austin, one of the foundation's board members. "Hayden, right? Louisa's wife?" Heat crept up my neck. "Yes." "Interesting career change." He chuckled, taking a glass. "From finance to this." His friends laughed. One of them, a guy I didn't recognize, leaned in conspiratorially. "What's the story here? Did she lose a bet?" "Something like that," Austin said, his eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. "The Lanes are very traditional about family roles." More laughter. I stood there holding the tray, my face burning, while they dissected my humiliation like it was dinner theater. "Hayden." Victoria appeared beside me, her hand gripping my elbow. "A word." She steered me toward a quiet corner, her nails digging into my arm. "You're not smiling enough," she hissed. "This is supposed to be a learning experience, not a pity party. People are starting to whisper. Maybe because you've turned your son's wife into a cocktail waitress at a charity event." Her eyes flashed. "You should be grateful we're including you at all. Do you have any idea how many strings I had to pull to make this family accept someone like you?" Someone like me. The phrase hung in the air between us like a slap. "Now go refill that tray and try to look like you're enjoying yourself." She glided away, leaving me standing there with my empty glasses and my burning cheeks. I was heading back to the kitchen when I heard Paisley's voice. "What the hell is this?" My sister stood in the service hallway, still in her college sweatshirt and jeans, staring at me in the uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes were blazing. "Paisley, what are you doing here?" "I came to surprise you. Drove 4 hours to see my sister at her fancy charity thing." She gestured at my outfit. "Instead, I find you dressed like—" "Keep your voice down." "Are you kidding me right now?" She stepped closer, and I could see she was shaking with anger. "They have you serving drinks at your own event?" "It's complicated." "No, it's not. It's sick." She grabbed my arm. "Come on, we're leaving." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because if I left now, Victoria would make Louise choose between his family and me, and I already knew how that would go. Because Paisley needed her tuition paid, and I needed to keep the peace to keep the money flowing. Because I'd spent 3 years building toward this moment, and I wasn't about to waste it. I just can't." Paisley stared at me like she didn't recognize me. "The Hayden I know would have burned this place down by now." "The Hayden you know didn't have responsibilities." Responsibilities? Her voice cracked. Is that what you call this? Hayden, they're destroying you. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Corey. Saw the news coverage starting. Local reporter here asking questions about foundation finances. You sure you want to do this? I looked at Paisley, then at the ballroom full of people who thought they were better than me, then at the message on my screen. Go home, I told my sister. Trust me on this one. Hayden, go home and watch the news tomorrow. She searched my face, and something she saw there made her step back. Okay, she said quietly, but if you need me, I know. She squeezed my hand and disappeared back down the hallway. I straightened my shoulders, picked up my tray, and walked back into the ballroom. Victoria was at the podium now, welcoming everyone to the annual Lane Foundation Gala, talking about family values and giving back to the community. My phone buzzed again, another text from Corey. Everything's in place, just say the word. I typed back, not yet. Let them finish digging their own grave first. The night was just getting started. The auction was in full swing when I witnessed Victoria's latest masterpiece of manipulation. I was refilling champagne glasses near the stage when I heard her announce the scholarship winner. This year's recipient of our underprivileged youth education grant is Cecilia Lane, Barry's niece. The crowd applauded politely, but I nearly dropped my tray. Cecilia was 17, drove a BMW to her private school, and had never been underprivileged a day in her life. I caught sight of the real application files earlier when I'd helped set up the display table. Maria Santos, a girl from the South Side whose essay about working 3 jobs to help her mom pay rent had made me tear up. She was supposed to win that scholarship. Cecilia has shown remarkable dedication to community service, Victoria continued as the teenager in her designer dress took the stage, looking embarrassed but not embarrassed enough to refuse the check. Bullshit, someone whispered behind me. I turned to see Kendall standing there, her face flushed with anger. Did you just... That scholarship was supposed to go to a kid who actually needs it, Kendall said quietly. I saw the applications. Cecilia wasn't even in the top 10. For the first time in 3 years, I saw something in my sister-in-law that looked like a conscience. Why don't you say something? I asked. Kendall's jaw tightened. Because I'm not stupid. You know what happens when someone crosses Mom. Yeah, I did. They got turned into cocktail waitresses at charity events. Here. Kendall took half the glasses from my tray. Let me help. We worked in silence for a few minutes, weaving through the crowd together. It was the first time any member of the Lane family had treated me like an actual person in months. This is wrong, Kendall said as we passed a group of donors discussing their tax write-offs. All of it. Tell me something I don't know. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it discreetly while Kendall distracted a grabby businessman who'd had too much champagne. Corey's text made my blood run cold. Found something. Victoria tried to adopt Paisley 12 years ago. Application was withdrawn suddenly. Did you know? I nearly dropped the tray for real this time. 12 years ago, Paisley would have been 7. I was 16, working 2 jobs to keep us both fed after our dad disappeared and our mom died. Victoria had wanted to adopt my baby sister? I typed back quickly, what happened? According to the files, someone intervened, convinced social services the girl was better off staying with family. Want to guess who? Me. I'd fought tooth and nail to keep Paisley, sleeping on friends' couches, lying about my age to get better jobs, doing whatever it took to prove I could take care of her. Victoria had wanted to take my sister away from me, and I'd stopped her. No wonder she hated me. Hayden? Kendall was staring at me. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. The pieces were falling into place now. Victoria's particular brand of cruelty toward me wasn't just about class or money. It was personal. I cost her something she wanted, and she'd been making me pay for it ever since. Ladies, Daphne appeared beside us, her smile predatory. Having fun playing dress-up, Hayden? Having a blast, I said flatly. You know, I was just talking to Louise about you. She sipped her champagne, savoring whatever bomb she was about to drop. He's worried about your attitude lately. Says you've been difficult. Kendall shifted uncomfortably beside me. Difficult how? I asked. Oh, you know, ungrateful, moody. He thinks maybe you don't appreciate everything this family has done for you. Daphne's eyes glittered with malice. He's wondering if maybe you married him for the wrong reasons. The words hit like a physical blow. Louise had been discussing our marriage with Daphne, questioning my motives. Where is my husband? I asked, my voice deadly calm. Last I saw, he was in Barry's study with some of the board members, probably talking business. She paused. Or wives? Kendall grabbed my arm as I started to move toward the door. Don't, she said quietly. Not here, not like this. Let go of me. Hayden, please, whatever you're thinking of doing. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before. Fear, not of me, but for me. You know what your family is, don't you? I said. She nodded slowly. And you know what they've done to me. Another nod. Then you know why I can't let this continue. I pulled free from her grip and headed toward the kitchen, my phone already in my hand. Corey, I texted, how fast can you get here? 20 minutes. Why? Because it's time to end this. Behind me, I could hear Victoria's voice over the microphone, thanking everyone for their generous donations to help deserving young people achieve their dreams. The irony was about to become a lot less funny. The kitchen was chaos, caterers rushing around, dishes clattering, steam rising from industrial ovens. I pushed through the swinging doors and nearly collided with Paisley. I thought I told you to go home. Yeah, well, I've never been good at following orders. She was still in her college clothes, looking completely out of place among the catering staff. I've been watching through the service window. This is insane, Hayden. They have you running around like the help, I know. So why are you still doing it? Before I could answer, Kingsley burst through the doors, his face red with alcohol and entitlement. There you are. He pointed at me with his champagne glass. Mom wants more of those little shrimp things, the ones with the fancy sauce. I'm not catering staff, I said evenly. Tonight you are. He grinned, clearly enjoying himself. Come on, sis. Family's got to stick together, right? Paisley stepped forward. Are you serious right now? Kingsley looked her up and down dismissively. And you are? Her sister, the one who's about to kick your ass if you don't back off. He laughed. Feisty. I like that. He turned back to me. Better keep your little sister on a leash, Hayden. Wouldn't want her causing a scene. I grabbed a fresh tray of appetizers from the counter. I'll get your shrimp. Hayden, no. Paisley caught my arm. Don't you dare. It's fine. It's not fine. None of this is fine. Her voice cracked. You're better than this. You're better than all of them. Kingsley was watching our exchange with amusement like we were performing for his entertainment. Actually, he said, I changed my mind about the shrimp. I think I want you to bring them to me personally, in the ballroom. Make a little announcement about how grateful you are to be part of the family. Go to hell, Paisley snapped. Excuse me? You heard me. Go to hell. Kingsley's face darkened. He stepped toward Paisley, but I moved between them. Don't, I said quietly. Or what? He was close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath. You'll tell Luis. He's the one who thought this whole thing was hilarious. The words hit like ice water. What? Oh, you didn't know? Kingsley's smile was cruel. This was his idea, originally. Well, him and Mom together. They thought you needed to learn your place. The tray slipped from my hands, but I caught it before it fell. You're lying. Am I? Ask him yourself. He's probably still in Dad's study, laughing about it with the guys. Paisley was staring at me, her face pale. Hayden, I have to go, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant. Where? To get some air. I pushed past Kingsley and out the back door into the garden. The cool night air hit my face, but it didn't help the burning in my chest. My phone buzzed. Corey. I'm in the parking lot. You ready for this? I stared at the message, my hands shaking slightly. Hayden? Paisley had followed me outside. Talked to me. He knew, I said. Luis knew what they were planning. He helped plan it. That bastard. 3 years, Paisley. 3 years I've been making excuses for him, telling myself he was just weak, that he loved me but couldn't stand up to his family. I laughed, but it came out bitter. He doesn't love me. He never did. So what are you going to do? I looked at my phone again, then at the mansion blazing with lights, full of people who thought they were untouchable. I'm going to show them exactly who they've been messing with. What does that mean? Remember when Dad died? The trust fund he left me? Yeah, you said it wasn't much. I lied. I typed a response to Corey. Come to the service entrance. Bring everything. Paisley's eyes widened. How much are we talking about? Enough to own this entire foundation. Enough to own them. Holy shit. The Lane family has been living off my money for 3 years and they don't even know it. Every donation, every event, every dollar they've spent, it all comes from Dad's trust. And you never told them? I wanted to belong somewhere. I thought if I helped them, if I made myself useful, they'd eventually accept me. I shook my head. Stupid. Not stupid. Human. My phone buzzed again. I'm here. Back entrance. Come on, I said to Paisley. Time to meet the man who's about to help me burn this whole thing down. Are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back. I thought about Luis laughing with his family about humiliating me, about Victoria stealing scholarships from kids who actually needed them, about 3 years of swallowing insults and pretending it didn't hurt. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. We walked back toward the house where the party was still in full swing, where people were still drinking champagne bought with my money and congratulating themselves on their generosity. They had no idea what was coming. Corey was waiting by the service entrance with a leather briefcase, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. You sure about this timing? He asked, glancing toward the ballroom where laughter and music spilled out into the night. There are reporters in there, local news, society pages. This is going to be everywhere by morning. Good, I said. I want witnesses. Paisley looked between us. What exactly is in that briefcase? Corey opened it, revealing stacks of legal documents. Proof that your sister owns the Lane Foundation, lock, stock, and barrel. How is that possible? Your father was smarter than anyone gave him credit for, Corey explained. He set up the trust to funnel money through shell companies. On paper, it looks like anonymous donations from various sources. In reality, it's all Hayden's inheritance. $73 million, I said quietly. That's what Dad left me, and I've been giving it away to people who treat me like garbage. Paisley whistled low. Jesus. The foundation's board doesn't know, Corey continued. They think they're managing donations from multiple benefactors. Only I know the truth because I helped set it up. Why? Paisley asked. Why hide it? I looked toward the ballroom where Victoria's voice carried over the crowd. thanking donors for their generous hearts. Because I wanted to belong, I thought if I helped them quietly, if I made their dreams possible, they'd love me for who I was, not what I had. Instead, they turned you into a servant, Paisley said. Tonight's the last night they get to do that. We walked back into the kitchen where the catering staff was preparing for the evening's final event, Barry's big speech about the foundation's mission. Through the service window, I could see him at the podium, adjusting his tie. Ladies and gentlemen, Barry's voice boomed through the sound system. Before we conclude this wonderful evening, I'd like to share some thoughts about family, gratitude, and knowing one's place in the world. Victoria appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes scanning until they found me. There you are. Come with me. Where? You're going to help with Barry's presentation, a little demonstration about humility and service. Kendall was behind her, looking sick. Mom, maybe we should— Quiet, Kendall. This is important. Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. Hayden needs to understand what it means to be truly grateful for this family's generosity. She led me toward the ballroom, Corey and Paisley following at a distance. The crowd had gathered around the stage, champagne glasses in hand, ready for the evening's grand finale. Now, Barry continued, as I'd like to invite someone special to join me, someone who exemplifies the spirit of service and gratitude that makes our foundation possible. Victoria pushed me forward. Go on, up on stage. I climbed the steps in my black uniform, feeling hundreds of eyes on me. The spotlight was blinding, but I could make out faces in the crowd, people I'd known, people who'd pretended not to recognize me earlier. Barry put his arm around my shoulders, his grip tight enough to keep me in place. This is Hayden, my daughter-in-law. Tonight she volunteered to serve our guests, to remind us all that true nobility comes from service, not status. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, others uncomfortable. Hayden, Barry continued, would you like to say a few words about what you've learned tonight? He held the microphone toward me, his eyes warning me to play along. I looked out at the crowd, at Victoria beaming with satisfaction, at Louise standing near the bar with Daphne, both of them smiling like this was the most natural thing in the world, at Kendall, who was shaking her head slightly, trying to warn me off, at Paisley, who was recording everything on her phone, at Corey, who nodded once and mouthed, now or never. Actually, I said, taking the microphone from Barry's surprised grip, I do have something to say. The crowd quieted, sensing a shift in the evening's energy. I've learned a lot tonight about family, about gratitude, about what happens when people mistake kindness for weakness. Victoria's smile faltered. I've learned that some people will take everything you give them and still demand more, that they'll humiliate you in public and expect you to thank them for the privilege. Barry tried to take the microphone back, but I stepped away from him. Most importantly, I've learned that sometimes the only way to teach people about consequences is to show them what happens when the money stops flowing. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the catering staff had stopped moving. You see, there's something the Lane family doesn't know about their foundation, something they should have asked before they decided to turn me into tonight's entertainment. Victoria was pushing through the crowd toward the stage, her face white with panic. I own it, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. All of it. Every dollar, every asset, every charitable program you've been bragging about tonight. The silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then chaos erupted. The ballroom exploded into noise, gasps, shouts, the sound of champagne glasses hitting the floor. Camera flashes went off as reporters pushed forward, sensing blood in the water. That's impossible. Victoria had reached the stage, her perfectly composed mask finally cracking. Barry, Get her off there. But Barry was frozen, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. $73 million. I continued into the microphone, my voice cutting through the chaos. That's how much my father left me when he died. That's how much I've been anonymously donating to keep this foundation running for the past 3 years. She's lying, Victoria shrieked. Security! Corey, I called out, would you mind sharing those documents with everyone? Corey stepped forward, briefcase open, pulling out papers and holding them up. Trust documentation, bank transfers, shell company records. It's all here. Every donation to the Lane Foundation since 2021 has come from Hayden's inheritance. A reporter pushed to the front. Ms. Lane, are you saying the family didn't know? They had no idea. They thought they were managing money from anonymous benefactors. Plural. I looked directly at Victoria, who was shaking with rage. Turns out it was just some very stupid benefactor who thought she could buy her way into a family that never wanted her. This is slander, Barry finally found his voice. We'll sue you for... For what? Telling the truth? I pulled out my phone and held it up. I have recordings of tonight's conversations. Your wife explaining how this humiliation was supposed to be a lesson in humility. Your son Kingsley telling me this was Luis's idea. The crowd turned toward Luis, who had gone pale. Daphne stepped away from him like he was radioactive. Hayden, please. Luis pushed through the crowd toward the stage. Let's talk about this privately. Privately? I laughed, and it echoed through the sound system. Like how you privately planned this whole thing with your mother? Like how you privately told Daphne I was ungrateful and difficult? I never said. You did. She told me. 20 minutes ago. I looked out at the crowd, many of whom were recording on their phones now. Ladies and gentlemen, I present my loving husband, who thought it would be hilarious to turn his wife into a waitress at a charity event. Luis's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Mom said it would be good for you, help you understand? Understand what? My place? I stepped closer to the edge of the stage. Well, let me help all of you understand something. As of right now, I'm withdrawing all funding from the Lane Foundation. The gasps were audible this time. Every program, every scholarship, every operating expense, it all stops tonight. You can't do that. Victoria was climbing onto the stage now, her designer dress hiked up, her hair coming loose. There are contracts, legal obligations. Actually, she can. Corey's voice carried across the room. The trust gives her complete discretionary control. She can withdraw funding at any time for any reason. But the scholarships, someone called out from the crowd, the youth programs. Don't worry, I said. The money's not disappearing. It's just going to organizations that actually help people instead of funding vanity projects and designer handbags. I pulled out a prepared list. Starting Monday, I'll be transferring funds to the City Food Bank, the Homeless Youth Coalition, and the Southside Education Initiative. You know, places that don't give scholarships to rich kids who already have everything. Cecilia, still wearing her tiara from the fake scholarship ceremony, burst into tears. This is insane! Victoria lunged for the microphone, but I stepped back. What's insane is that you people have been living off my money for 3 years while treating me like garbage. What's insane is that you thought I'd just take it forever. Kendall appeared at the foot of the stage. Hayden, wait. The crowd quieted, waiting to see which side she'd choose. You're right, she said, her voice shaking, about all of it. What we did tonight, what we've been doing to you, it's unforgivable. Victoria whirled on her daughter. Kendall, don't you dare. No, Mom, I'm done. Kendall looked up at me. I'm sorry. I should have stopped this years ago. Kendall. Victoria's voice was shrill with panic, but Kendall was already walking away, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. I looked out at the sea of faces, shocked, horrified, fascinated, at the reporters scribbling notes and recording everything, at Luis, who was crying now, reaching up toward the stage. Please, he said. Hayden, please, we can fix this. No, I said into the microphone, my voice steady and clear. We can't. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together. I set the microphone down on the podium and walked off the stage, leaving the Lane family to face the wreckage of their perfect evening. The last thing I heard before the ballroom doors closed behind me was Victoria screaming my name. The parking lot was chaos. Reporters chased after guests, cameras flashing, everyone shouting questions at once. I pushed through the crowd with Paisley and Corey flanking me like bodyguards. Hayden! Hayden! A woman with a microphone shoved it in my face. Channel 7 News. Can you comment on the allegations against the Lane Foundation? No comment, Corey said, steering me toward his car. Is it true you've been funding the foundation anonymously for years? Is your marriage over? What's next for the Lane family? I stopped walking. Paisley grabbed my arm. Don't, she warned. You've said enough. But I turned towards the cameras anyway. You want to know what's next? I said. What's next is that charity money is going to go to people who actually need it. Kids who work 3 jobs to help their families, homeless shelters that don't care about photo ops, food banks that feed people instead of egos. More flashes, more shouting. Behind me, I could hear the ballroom doors opening, voices spilling out into the night. Hayden! Louisa's voice cut through the noise. Wait! I didn't turn around. Please, we need to talk. No, we don't. But he caught up anyway, grabbing my shoulder. His bow tie was undone, his hair messy, his eyes red. You can't just destroy everything because you're angry. Watch me. This isn't just about us. There are people who depend on that foundation. Programs that help. Help who? I spun around to face him. Rich kids like Cecilia? Your mother's country club friends who need tax write-offs? That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and it came out harsh. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when your family spent 3 years making me feel like I wasn't good enough? Was it fair when you helped plan tonight's little humiliation? His face crumpled. I didn't want to. Mom said it would be good for you, help you fit in better. By making me a servant at my own charity event? It wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought you'd laugh it off, make a joke. You thought I'd laugh off being publicly humiliated? People were gathering around us now, phones out, recording everything. Louise seemed to realize we had an audience. Can we please do this somewhere private? Like how you privately discussed our marriage with Daphne? Like how you privately planned this whole thing with your mother? I never meant... You never mean anything, Louise. That's the problem. I stepped back, putting distance between us. You never mean to hurt me, but you do it anyway. You never mean to choose them over me, but you always do. That's not true. Name one time in 3 years when you stood up for me against your family. He opened his mouth, then closed it. That's what I thought. My phone was buzzing constantly now, text after text. I glanced at the screen and saw messages from news outlets, old friends, people I hadn't heard from in years. Holy shit, is this real? From my college roommate. Saw the news. You're a legend. From a former coworker. Channel 9 wants an exclusive interview. Call me. From a number I didn't recognize. Hayden. Victoria's voice made me look up. She was standing at the edge of the crowd, her perfect composure completely shattered. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her dress wrinkled. You've destroyed us, she said. Are you happy now? Get in there. 30 years we've built this foundation, 30 years of helping people. Helping yourselves, you mean? We gave you everything, a home, a family, a place in society. You gave me nothing. I paid for everything. The house, the cars, the designer clothes, the fancy dinners, all of it came from my money. Victoria's face went white. That's impossible. Ask Corey, ask your accountant, ask anyone who's actually looked at the books instead of just spending the money. Barry appeared beside his wife, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. The board is in emergency session, he said quietly. They want answers. Then give them some. Tell them how you've been mismanaging funds for years. Tell them about the fake scholarship you gave Cecilia tonight. Tell them about the money you've been skimming for administrative costs. I have the records, Barry, all of them. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. What did you do? Victoria whispered. I called the state attorney general's office, told them they might want to look into the Lane Foundation's finances. I smiled. They seemed very interested. The sirens were louder now. Red and blue lights flashed between the trees lining the driveway. You called the police on us? Louise stared at me like he'd never seen me before. I called the authorities on a charity that's been misusing funds. There's a difference. But we're family. No, I said, as the first police car pulled into the parking lot. We're not. I walked away, leaving them standing there in the flashing lights, finally understanding that their perfect world was over, and I was just getting started. The moving truck pulled away from the Lane mansion as I loaded the last box into my car. Paisley sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through news articles on her phone. Listen to this headline, she said. Charity scandal rocks elite family. Foundation loses tax-exempt status. Good. And this one, anonymous donor revealed as victim of family abuse. I slammed the trunk shut. I wasn't abused. I was just stupid. Same thing sometimes. My phone rang. Corey. The asset freeze is complete, he said without preamble. The house, the cars, all the foundation accounts. The state's taken over the investigation. What about the real charities? First transfers went through this morning. The food bank got $500,000. The homeless shelter got $300,000. They're crying happy tears over there. Good. There's something else. Kendall wants to meet with you. I looked back at the mansion where crime scene tape still fluttered around the front entrance. Why? She says she has information you need to hear. I'm done with that family. She's not staying with them. She moved out yesterday, got her own apartment across town. I considered this. Where? Coffee shop on 5th Street, 1 hour. Kendall was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a mug like it was an anchor. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer armor. You came, she said as I sat down. Corey said you had information. I do. She pulled out a manila envelope. About Paisley. My blood went cold. What about her? The adoption thing, when she was 7. Kendall's hand shook as she opened the envelope. I found these in Mom's safe. She spread out documents across the table, official papers, court filings, social worker reports. Mom didn't just try to adopt Paisley, Kendall said quietly. She had it all arranged. The paperwork was filed. The home study was done. Everything. But it didn't happen. Because you fought it. You got a lawyer, proved you could take care of her. Kendall looked up at me. But that's not the whole story. She pulled out another document, a bank statement. Mom bribed the social worker, paid her $10,000 to recommend the adoption. She was going to take Paisley whether you wanted it or not. The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me. What? You weren't just fighting the system? You were fighting a rigged game. Kendall's voice was barely a whisper. When you won, anyway, When you kept Paisley despite everything Mom threw at you, it broke something in her. She's hated you ever since. I stared at the bank statement, at Victoria's signature authorizing the bribe. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. And because, she wiped her eyes, because I can't be part of this family anymore. What we did to you, what we've been doing for years, it's sick. Where will you go? I don't know. I've got some money saved, enough for a few months. I'll figure it out. I looked at this woman who'd been part of my torment for 3 years, who was now sitting across from me looking lost and broken. The Southside Education Initiative needs a program coordinator, I said. Someone who understands how these foundations work, how to avoid the mistakes your family made. Kendall's eyes widened. You'd recommend me? I'd hire you myself, if you're serious about making amends. I am. God, I am. My phone buzzed. A text from Luis. Please call me. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. He's been trying to reach you? Kendall asked. Every day. Voicemails, texts, emails. He even showed up at my hotel yesterday. What does he want? Forgiveness? A second chance? The usual bullshit. Will you give it to him? I thought about the man I'd married, the one who'd promised to love and protect me, who'd instead helped orchestrate my public humiliation. Some things can't be fixed, I said. Kendall nodded. I know. We sat in silence for a moment, two women who'd been on opposite sides of a war that nobody really won. The job offer stands, I said, standing up. Think about it. I will. Thank you. I walked out into the afternoon sun where Paisley was waiting by the car. How'd it go? Better than expected. So what now? I looked around at the city I'd called home for 3 years, at the life I'd built and then burned down in a single night. Now we start over. Are you okay with that? I thought about Victoria, probably sitting in a lawyer's office right now, trying to figure out how to salvage her reputation. About Barry, whose foundation was being dismantled piece by piece. About Luis, who'd lost his wife and his family's fortune in one spectacular evening. About the food bank that would feed thousands of people with money that used to buy designer handbags. About the homeless shelter that would house families instead of funding charity galas. About kids like Maria Santos who'd get real scholarships instead of watching them go to rich kids who didn't need them. Yeah, I said, getting into the car. I'm okay with that. Paisley started the engine. Where to? Somewhere they don't know our names yet. Sounds perfect. As we drove away, I turned off my phone and let the world's chaos fade into the distance. For the first time in 3 years, the silence felt like freedom. Some stories are meant to end like this.
I was planning a trip with my in-laws and decided to call my son, Anthony, to see if he had any plans. I'm going to practice, he said. You all should go and have fun. Isn't this trip a bit unusual? Are you okay, Mom? Anthony asked. I'll manage. I'll bring you back a souvenir. Work hard at your practice, I replied. My son, Anson, has always loved running marathons, just like me. He even got a college scholarship for it. Even though his college is nearby, he lives in the dorms to save commuting time and only comes home during mom holidays. I knew he couldn't join us on the trip, but I wanted to ask anyway. His answer was just what I expected. My name is Flora. I'm 46 years old and work full-time. My husband, Steve, is 4 years older than me and used to be my boss. He's a capable man, and I respect him. After we got married and had our son, we were a happy family. But over time, our relationship started having problems. The main reason was my husband's parents, especially his mom, who didn't like me from the beginning and often bullied me. At first, Steve defended me because we lived far from his parents, so we didn't see them often. But when Ensign wanted to attend a high school near my mom's house because of his love for marathoning, things changed. I was the one who got him into running since I used to run marathons and still do sometimes. I was happy he enjoyed running like me, so I convinced Steve to move closer to the high school Anson wanted to attend. Steve applied for a transfer at work so we could move, and Anson got into a good university because of his high school, so it worked out well. The day before our trip, Steve said, "Go get the rental car tomorrow morning and pick up my parents on your way back." I was confused and asked, "Why am I the one renting the car? What are you going to do?" "I'm exhausted from work, so I'll sleep until the last minute. Once you pick up my parents, come back and I'll drive from there. It's on the way to where we're going anyway," Steve explained. I understood his reasoning, but I was also very tired. Even though we both worked similar hours, I did all the house chores. When I thought about it, we used to share chores equally. But since moving closer to his parents, they started visiting often, and the balance shifted. Whenever his mom saw Steve doing chores, she strongly disapproved. "Housework is the wife's job. The breadwinner shouldn't do it. Isn't that right, Flora?" Steve's mom would say, giving me a stern look, and I would nod in agreement. This kept happening until Steve stopped doing any chores at all. While it was partly Steve's fault, I felt his mom influenced him a lot. Steve even started repeating what his mom would say, agreeing with her views. I am sometimes the breadwinner in our family, but it felt pointless to try to fix things, and I didn't have the energy to even try. Steve had changed a lot in the past few years. His work performance seemed to be getting worse, and he often took out his frustrations on me. I realized that our giving back only caused more problems, so I decided to just accept the situation. It seemed like the least stressful way to live. I thought about divorce sometimes, but I worried it might hurt our son's chances of getting into college if we became a single-parent family. So I put that idea aside. Instead, I started thinking of my husband more like a pet than a person, which surprisingly made me feel less stressed. Eventually, I realized that getting a divorce wasn't worth the effort, and that's how I ended up where I am today. I agreed to this trip because it was to a resort I really loved. I knew I could have a great time even if I ended up doing things alone. Honestly, I was ready to do separate activities from my in-laws and husband if necessary. Maybe they invited me mainly to drive, but since both my husband and father-in-law could drive, I figured it would be fine. I played along with the idea that our spoiled dog was being demanding again. My husband asked me to pick up the rental car, so I went to my in-laws' house. "Flora, you're late. Is this the car for today? You should have rented a bigger one," my mother-in-law said. "Well, it's better than your tiny car, at least," I replied. "The car we usually use is one I bought myself, even for commuting to work. I assumed I'd be its main user since I paid for it. We don't often travel out of town, so I thought a small car would be enough. Plus, I loved its interior design and color, so I bought it. My husband would use it without asking and show his parents around in it. My mother-in-law criticized the car's size and acted like I could only afford a small car. I suggested we use my father-in-law's car for the trip, but he didn't want others driving it and didn't want to do all the driving himself. So we rented a car, but I wasn't consulted about this. I found out that I'd have to pick up the rental car and drive it while they sat comfortably in the back seat. It made me want to tell them to arrange their own transportation. I was really tired. In the end, even though my husband said he'd help with the driving, he slept through the entire trip. My father-in-law refused to drive unless it was his car, leaving me to drive the whole way while my husband napped in the passenger seat. My father-in-law constantly criticized my driving, giving me suggestions too late or questioning my decisions at traffic lights. It was just added stress. My mother-in-law joined in, criticizing my driving too. I found it annoying to be critiqued by someone who couldn't drive herself, especially since my father-in-law had been in many accidents and should have given up his license. My mother-in-law insisted he was just unlucky and a good driver. I didn't want him to drive me around anyway. I didn't mind driving, but I wished he would stop interfering. When we arrived at the resort, my husband finally woke up, tired from a day in the car. We followed my in-laws' suggestion to relax at the hotel instead of doing any activities outside. I enjoyed the chance to unwind, swimming in the pool and exploring the hotel grounds. It was a nice way to spend the day after a delicious dinner and a relaxing spa visit. I returned to our room to find my husband already asleep. I wasn't sure what my in-laws were doing next door, but they were probably asleep too. I went to bed, and when I woke up to the fresh morning air, my husband was still asleep. With some time before breakfast, I decided to take a walk. But when I returned, I found an unbelievable sight. My husband was gone, and his things were missing too. I frantically searched the room and tried to contact my in-laws next door, but there was no answer. At the front desk, I learned they had already eaten breakfast an hour earlier than I was told. It seemed they had left me behind. I also had to pay for the hotel checkout by myself. Was my mother-in-law's offer to pay for our stay just a trick? With no other choice, I paid for both rooms and left the hotel, only to find there was no car waiting for me. While I was thinking about what to do next, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Where are you now?" I asked, confused about the situation. My mother-in-law chuckled in response, just enjoying some quality family time since we're on vacation. I see, but why didn't you all just leave together from the beginning instead of leaving me behind? I couldn't help but ask. Wow, Flora, you did express interest in joining us, didn't you? That's why we decided to bring you along, she replied casually. I remembered mentioning that I wanted to visit this resort while watching TV with my husband. Was that what he remembered? Normally, it would be sweet if he remembered my casual comments, but this time it felt like he used it to annoy me. Besides, I was the one who did most of the driving to get here. Why should I be reminded that I was brought here by my mother-in-law, who neither drove nor contributed any money? Beyond anger, all I could do was sigh. Fine then, let's go sightseeing as a family and head home afterward, I suggested. You can do some sightseeing too, Flora, and then come back. We're not sure how you'll get back, but you're good at marathons, aren't you? Just run back, my mother-in-law taunted, her laughter making me more frustrated. If Steve is driving, put me on speakerphone so he can hear me, I demanded, my anger boiling over. As soon as I made the request, it seemed my mother-in-law transferred the call, and my husband's voice came on the line. Good morning, you were eager to come here, weren't you? Take it easy today, but remember we have laundry from the trip to tackle. Make sure it's washed by tomorrow morning, he said cheerfully. But any warmth I once felt for him had disappeared. Do your own laundry, I replied sharply. Hey, that's not a nice way to speak. As the breadwinner, I'm advising you to relax today. You should be thanking me, he replied. Oh, the breadwinner? Don't worry, this will be the last time we see each other since you've mostly just seen me when you're asleep, I said, making it clear that I was serious. What do you mean? He asked, clearly puzzled. We need to head back home today. There's laundry and house cleaning waiting for us, my husband declared. Yeah, that's exactly why I'm not going back, I responded firmly. What do you mean? His voice quivered with uncertainty. I'm filing for divorce. Remember 6 months ago when you told me you met your soulmate, your childhood friend, and you were planning to marry her? The one who moved back to your hometown after her divorce? I reminded him, feeling the surge of emotion. About 6 months ago, I sensed something was wrong and confronted my husband. He confessed he had reconnected with his childhood friend and believed she was his true love. He wanted to divorce me and marry her to support her and her child as a single mother. He even gave me pre-filled divorce papers, but I couldn't bring myself to end our marriage. We didn't speak for days until he realized he needed my help with household chores. Eventually, he asked me to forget what he said, but I couldn't, so I started gathering evidence of his cheating. I wondered if Steve had planned this trip to try to win me over. This conversation happened about 3 months ago, shortly after I quit my job. As I shared my thoughts, I could hear the surprise in my in-laws' voices on the other end of the speakerphone. It seemed this was the first time they were hearing about their son's resignation. I remember when you said you were leaving your job. I was worried about you finding a new one and disagreed with your reasons, didn't I? I continued, recalling the exchange. You were confident and assured me you'd find a new job quickly. Yet here we are, and you've only managed to secure a part-time position. I can't help but wonder when you'll find something more stable. As Steve remained silent while driving, I took the chance to share my thoughts. I've been imagining you as a dog to cope with the stress, but then I realized I might as well get a real one, I said firmly. So I'll be filing the divorce papers. Enjoy your family vacation. My in-laws were shocked, and my husband tried to say something, but I hung up the call without a second thought. I decided to enjoy sightseeing before heading home, and I explained the situation to my son over the phone. His response was simple. I told you so. While his reaction was expected, it felt a bit lighter than I anticipated, given that he already knew what was going on. When I returned from the trip, I didn't go back home. Instead, I put my sons and my belongings in a self-storage unit, just in case. With only the essentials, I went to a real estate agency. The sales representative, who I had become friendly with and shared drinks with a few times, greeted me warmly. She was from my generation, so she was easy to talk to. Over drinks, I had told her about my husband and in-laws and asked her to let me know if any properties became available. That day, I signed a contract for my own place. Having a new home made me feel relieved, and I went to the city hall to submit the divorce papers, which went through without any problems. Finally, I returned the many calls my ex-husband had made. Hello, I began, keeping my voice steady. The divorce papers have been accepted. We are now officially strangers. My husband's panicked voice came through the phone. Are you serious about the divorce? I ended things with her. It's just you now. You didn't like me looking at other women, right? Well, now I'm only focused on you. Please come back without any worries. But his words only made me feel disgusted. What are you talking about? I never tried to please you in the first place. And you didn't end things with her, did you? You were dumped because you couldn't find a job and had no money, right? It turned out my husband's mistress was acquainted with the sales representative who helped me find my new place. What a small world. She had listened to my husband's mistress's complaints about him, saying she was his current girlfriend. Apparently, after he quit his job and started working part-time, she saw no reason to stay with him and ended things. But a fling is just a fling. I'll definitely be seeking compensation. That's correct. Even though they split up now, he still cheated, and there's evidence. Compensation. I already told you, we broke up. It's just you now. I could only let out a sigh. So, you're saying that now you're single, you're considering another affair. I don't care what you do, but I'm done being taken advantage of. You didn't even notice your things were missing from the house because you didn't care, did you? I'm not coming back, so throw away whatever you don't need. With that, I ended the call. Even after this, my ex-husband kept calling me, and my former in-laws reached out too. But I have no intention of going back to that house. My ex-husband still hasn't found a job, can't afford the rent, and has moved back in with his parents. Meanwhile, my ex-father-in-law continues to drive recklessly and recently crashed into a neighbor's fence with my ex-mother-in-law in the car. Thankfully, no one was injured, but they didn't have property insurance and had to borrow money to cover the repair costs. All of this was detailed in an email my ex-husband kept sending me. I find his misfortune somewhat amusing. While I don't respond, I haven't blocked his emails either, quietly enjoying the spectacle. After moving to a pet-friendly property, I got a small dog and found that I enjoyed caring for a pet more than I did for people. My son, worried about me being alone, has started visiting on weekends, a change from only coming during long holidays. Each day now feels fulfilling. Maybe this weekend I'll visit that resort town again for the first time in a while. Hi, I'm Emily, and I just turned 29. Years ago, I made the mistake of marrying a man with lots of problems, thinking love would fix everything. I believed I could show him how valuable he was, but I was wrong. Love is strong, but it can't make someone love themselves. I'll call my ex Joseph. He was obsessed with making his parents happy. It wasn't just a normal desire to please them. It was an overwhelming need for their approval that influenced everything he did. Joseph's parents, who I'll call Mr. and Mrs. Ellis, didn't really care about his life, which made him desperate for their attention. It was sad to watch, and I quickly realized I couldn't fill the emotional void left by his parents. To make things worse, Joseph had a terrible habit of spending our savings on things his parents wanted. He bought them extravagant gifts, vacations, and other unnecessary stuff. Our money seemed to flow directly to Mr. and Mrs. Ellis, and their lack of appreciation made it even more frustrating for me. This reckless spending was a constant source of arguments between us. It felt like I was competing with his parents for his attention, which drained our marriage. Despite all the problems and constant arguments, I still cared about Joseph. I hoped he could free himself from his parents' unrealistic expectations and find happiness within himself. But it became clear that my love wasn't enough to help him escape their negative influence. Things took an even sharper turn one day. Joseph came to me looking serious and said he had something important to tell me. After all the ups and downs we've been through, I prepared myself for the worst, not knowing the bombshell he was about to drop. As he started talking, I had a gut feeling this would lead to our biggest argument yet. "Emily, there's something important I need to talk about," he said seriously. "What's going on?" I asked, already bracing myself for bad news. "It's about my parents. They're retiring soon, and I want to surprise them with a luxury vacation. It's going to cost a lot," he said, looking both excited and nervous. "That sounds nice as long as the money comes from your own savings. I really don't want to use our joint savings again," I said, hoping to avoid another fight about money. "I don't have enough to pay for it myself. I was hoping we could use some of our savings," Joseph admitted, looking hopeful but worried. "Joseph, if it's more than we can afford, maybe we should rethink this expense," I suggested gently, trying to bring him back to reality. But he got upset. "You just don't understand, Emily. I love my parents and wanted to do something special for them. Love isn't about counting every penny. It's about grand gestures," he argued passionately. I argued, but love is also about being there for each other and making sacrifices together, not at the expense of our financial stability. This trip might be important to them, but we need to think about our future too. Joseph was determined. "I have to do this for them. I thought you, of all people, would understand. They're everything to me." "And you're everything to me, Joseph, but we have to be practical. We can't just use up all our savings on one trip." I tried to find a compromise, but he accused me of being selfish and not seeing the importance of his gesture. "It's not about being selfish, it's about being sensible and planning for the future," I explained, wondering just how much he planned to spend. When he said he needed all of our savings, my heart sank. All of our savings, Joseph. That's just reckless, I said, shocked by his request. You're being heartless, he shot back, convinced I couldn't understand his desire to make his parents happy. No, Joseph, I'm being realistic. We can't afford to spend $85,000 on a whim, I said, my patience running out. His casual mention of getting the money back later only added to my frustration. Really, Joseph? That's not how this works, I replied, my disbelief obvious. We were at a standstill. Our views on love, responsibility, and money were completely different. The argument got louder and more intense. Suddenly, things were being thrown and breaking as if to emphasize our anger. In the midst of this chaos, Joseph declared that if I couldn't support him, he wanted a divorce. He probably expected me to panic and try to save our marriage. But I didn't. Instead, I gathered all my calm and resolve and simply said, "Okay, Joseph, if that's truly what you want." The shock on his face was clear. He had expected tears and begging, but what he got was my firm stance. I was done indulging his fantasies. If he wanted to waste his future chasing unrealistic dreams, he could do it without me. I didn't hold back. I told him everything. I made it clear that his endless quest for his parents' approval was pointless, like trying to stay dry in a storm with just an umbrella. He tried to argue, but I stopped him with a simple raise of my hand. I declared that I was done fighting for a love trapped by unrealistic expectations and a constant need for validation. Go ahead, spend all your money trying to win over people who barely notice you, I told him, firm in my decision to end the cycle of disappointments and broken promises. And with that, the harsh truth hit him. He finally realized how bad things had gotten. Our marriage had turned into a battlefield, and it was time to raise the white flag and find peace separately. A month has passed since the divorce was finalized, and I can honestly say the feeling of freedom is incredible. Gone are the days of endless arguments about money or seeking approval that was never ours to gain. Now I'm breathing easier, free from the heavy burden of his doubts that once darkened my days. Each new day seems a little brighter. True, Joseph has tried to sneak back into my life, pretending to be concerned and asking about my well-being, but I saw through his act. I wasn't going to fall for his tricks again. As the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I firmly turned away from Joseph's attempts to rekindle anything we once had. I had realized I'd invested too much in trying to fix someone who didn't want to change. It was time to focus on my own growth and happiness. Rebuilding wasn't easy, let me be clear. Dividing our shared assets and adjusting to a new financial reality took patience and resilience. I was used to a certain way of living, but adapting wasn't new to me. I embraced the hard work needed to rebuild my life, discovering a strength and independence I didn't know I had. Reconnecting with old friends, getting back into hobbies I'd neglected, and finding new interests made the world feel big and full of possibilities. I was eager to make the most of this fresh start. Sure, there were moments of self-doubt and loneliness, and adjusting to a new budget was challenging. The wounds from a failed marriage don't heal overnight, but with each passing day, I found comfort in the fact that I was no longer sacrificing my happiness for someone else's insecurities. The ease with which I moved forward might have been a sign that I had been holding on to a lost cause for too long. It amazed me how much I could accomplish once free from that burden. So here I was, a month later, still adjusting but flourishing all the same. Joseph's constant messaging had taken a new turn. He was now claiming to be in danger and insisting on a meeting. Tired of his relentless attempts to contact me, I decided it was time to confront the situation. In the middle of his ongoing messages, I called him. "Joseph, we've been through this. We're divorced. It's time for us to move on," I said firmly. "Emily, please. I just need a moment to explain. I'm in serious trouble, and you're the only one I can turn to for help," he begged. Maybe it was the long absence of his voice, or perhaps he truly sounded scared, but against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. "Fine, but we're not meeting at my place. Let's go to that cafe we used to go to. No tricks, understood," I said. "Thank you, Emily. I promise I just need someone to listen." "You're the only one who understands me," he replied, sounding relieved. "I know what you're thinking. Emily, why would you agree to meet Joseph after everything?" Believe me, I questioned my own decision. Yet sometimes there's a part of us that gives in to a mix of curiosity and a lingering shred of concern, no matter how strong we are. I couldn't ignore his plea. Divorced or not, part of me still cared. So there we sat, opposite each other in the cozy cafe, surrounded by the comforting aroma of coffee. But not even the pleasant smell could ease the tension between us. Watching Joseph, with anxiety on his face and his attempts to tug at my heartstrings with those sad eyes, was almost amusing. This time, however, I wasn't swayed. Leaning back, I stayed calm and composed, ready to listen but firmly in control. I intended to steer this conversation on my terms. Okay, Joseph, you got my attention for now. What's this danger you're supposedly in? And just so you know, I'm not here to save you. I'm done cleaning up your messes, I said, keeping my tone firm yet open. Joseph sighed, deeply, his face a mix of regret and desperation that was almost pitiful to see. But I steeled myself against any emotional manipulation. I know I've made mistakes before, Emily, but this situation is different. I've gotten involved with some seriously bad people. I owe them a lot of money and they're not known for their patience, he confessed. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical of his dramatic story. Really, Joseph? Dangerous people? Are we revisiting the tale of your imaginary friends who seem to attract trouble? I couldn't hide my disbelief. Joseph's expression shifted to one of hurt and frustration, evidently hoping for a more sympathetic ear. No, Emily, this isn't made up. I'm in deep trouble, and coming to you was my last resort, he insisted, his voice laced with desperation. So let me guess, you spiraled after our divorce and now you're in debt? Was it that trip you mentioned? I couldn't keep my voice down, drawing curious glances from other cafe patrons. I shot them an apologetic look, trying to regain my composure. Look, I got caught up in something foolish, I admit, but now I'm in a mess that's bigger than I can handle alone, Joseph admitted, his gaze pleading. My frustration was close to boiling over. How could he waltz back into my life with yet another crisis? Yet, underneath the anger, I couldn't completely ignore the remaining shred of empathy for him. How much are you in for? I asked, bracing myself. $145,000, Joseph responded sheepishly. $145,000? Joseph, are you out of your mind? The cafe's patrons turned their heads, their stares sharp as knives. This time, I didn't bother to offer an apology for my outburst. If they were in my shoes, hearing what I was hearing, they'd likely react the same way. Emily, please, I'm begging you. I've got nowhere else to turn. I know I've made a mess of things, but you're the one person who really believed in me, Joseph pleaded, his eyes shining with a sincerity that reminded me of the man I once loved. But those days were long gone, and my priority now was self-preservation, even if it meant walking away from him. Don't pull at my heartstrings, Joseph. It's way too late for that. When you said you needed help, I thought you meant $12,000, not $145,000. You've completely lost it, I responded, my voice a mix of disbelief and indignation. Overwhelmed, Joseph began to cry, oblivious to the uncomfortable glances from others. Joseph, calm down. This isn't the place for a scene. What's going to happen if you don't pay this back? I asked, trying to grasp the full extent of his predicament. They're threatening to harm me, Emily. I'm not joking. This is really bad, he managed between sobs. His words hung heavy in the air, leaving me torn between my lingering concern for his well-being and the need to protect myself from getting dragged back into his chaos. Seeing how serious things were for him, I softened my approach. All right, Joseph, start from the beginning and tell me everything, I said gently. He explained how he had tried to pay for an expensive trip for his parents. He borrowed money from a friend who let him down, leaving him with a lot of debt. As he told his story, I felt a mix of frustration at his poor choices and some reluctant amusement at how things turned out. So you borrowed money from risky people to impress your parents who hadn't even noticed your efforts. Is that what happened? I asked, trying to understand. Joseph's face dropped and tears rolled down his cheeks as he admitted the harsh truth. Yes, ever since they went on that trip, it's like I don't matter to them, he said, sounding very sorry. Even though I was frustrated, I felt a bit of sympathy for him. It was a tough lesson for Joseph, and seeing him so regretful made me feel a bit compassionate. You've really gotten yourself into a tough spot, I said. Joseph, I know you don't want to hear I told you so, but you did create this mess yourself. I warned you it wasn't a good idea, and now you chose to leave me over it, and here you are, struggling. You put everything into trying to make your parents happy, but all you got in return was silence. It's a hard lesson, but it's one you needed to learn, I said, feeling a mix of concern and resignation. This was a hard truth for both of us. Joseph had based his self-worth on people who couldn't appreciate his sacrifices, and I had to accept that I couldn't protect him from his own choices anymore. I hoped that facing these tough consequences would show him that I had always been on his side. But his need for parental approval was his downfall. As we sat in silence, the weight of our past, filled with broken promises and dreams, was heavy. I realized it was time to let go completely. No more second chances, no more trying to fix what was beyond repair. Joseph needed to face the results of his actions alone, and I needed to move on and find my own happiness. I hope you find a way out of this, Joseph, I said, my voice firm with finality. You're not going to help? Joseph asked, looking surprised. No, I'm not, I replied. Joseph, I can't help you. Why not? He asked. Because I don't have the money to bail you out, and even if I did, taking on a huge loan that I'd be paying off for years isn't an option. I can't afford to be as reckless as you've been, I explained firmly. Come on, Emily, please. I'm begging you, he said, his desperation clear. Joseph, expecting me to fix this for you, especially with how you're acting, isn't realistic, I said, my patience wearing thin. Yeah, I did expect that. You're my ex-wife, not my enemy, he replied, still holding on to hope. But it was clear our lives had gone in different directions. My focus now was on finding my own peace and happiness, separate from the chaos we once shared. And that's the problem, Joseph. You expect me to always be there to clean up your mess because that's what I used to do. I was your wife, so helping you out of trouble was something I did naturally. But I can't and shouldn't keep doing that. It's not my responsibility anymore. After everything, I don't owe you anything, especially considering how our money was wasted on your ungrateful and toxic parents. But I love them, Joseph said. But I love myself too. And loving myself means doing what's best for me, including taking care of my own well-being, I said. Joseph looked down, realizing that he wasn't going to get the help he wanted from me. Since it seems like you're out of options, here's one piece of advice. Leave. Move somewhere far away where they can't find you. If you can't do that, I'm not sure what else you expect from me. He sat there in silence, clearly frustrated by my refusal to help him this time. It's time for us to go our separate ways, Joseph. I can't keep being dragged back into your problems. We both need to find our own peace, I said, hoping he would understand. If you really cared about me, you'd help, he said, anger in his voice. Goodbye, Joseph. I'm changing my number, I said firmly as I stood up to leave. As I walked away, Joseph stayed seated, his face showing a mix of emotions. It was a tough but necessary step for me to take for my own happiness and self-respect. So, you already have the divorce papers ready? Are you trying to scare me? You know I'm ready for this at any time. You'd better calm down and think about what you just said. With that, my husband Jackson got up and went into his room. My name is Kama, and I'm a 28-year-old office worker. I got married a year ago to a man named Jackson. We met on a blind date, and after dating for a year and a half, he proposed to me. Although I thought we got married a bit too soon, I'd always wanted to be married and have children before turning 30, so I accepted his proposal. However, I later realized I should have been more cautious. The first surprise came when Jackson changed his job as soon as we got married. Out of the blue, he said he was changing jobs. Why all of a sudden? I asked him, he replied, because I can't show my full potential there. I was taken aback, especially when he told me he had already submitted his resignation and would leave at the end of the month. He managed to get a new job, but the salary was lower than his previous one. I thought it was fine since I was also working, but then Jackson started asking me to quit my job. I would have been okay with quitting if his income could support us both. However, as I mentioned, he had just changed jobs and his salary was now lower. Jackson insisted that his salary would increase soon, but we had no idea when that would be. If I quit my job now, we wouldn't be able to save any money and would struggle to cover expenses like rent and car payments. In short, we couldn't manage on Jackson's salary alone. I told Jackson, I won't quit my job until your salary goes up. Jackson seemed to agree, but he kept asking me to quit. Every time I gave him the same answer. Now we've been married for a year and Jackson's salary still hasn't increased. He keeps asking, when are you going to quit? I'm tempted to sarcastically say, now, and then tell him I'm just kidding because I can't quit yet. If he wants me to quit so badly, he should earn more money. I feel like he should focus on his work instead of persistently asking me to quit. I wondered why Jackson wants me to quit my job so badly, and I finally figured it out. It seems Jackson wants me to take care of his mother, Helen. Whenever we visited my in-laws' house, Jackson would say to Helen, I just want to make things easier for you, Mom. Helen would graciously thank him, and then Jackson would add, but we're both working, giving me a meaningful look. It was as if he was subtly pushing me to quit my job. Jackson claims his mother needs assistance, but Helen isn't sick or in need of care. She's healthy and quite active. In fact, she earns enough from her part-time job to support her hobbies, social outings, and live a fulfilling life. Realistically, she doesn't require my help at all. If I were in Helen's shoes, I'd feel disheartened to be seen as needing care when I'm perfectly capable. But Jackson continues to insist that I take care of Helen. Oh, if only one of us were home during the day, we could go check on Mom every day, Jackson suddenly voiced his thoughts. It seemed he wanted me to visit my in-laws' house daily, and hearing this was exhausting. I persisted in questioning my husband. Helen is perfectly healthy, so what exactly do you expect me to do? Jackson responded matter-of-factly, there are plenty of things you could do. You could help with housework or run errands. There's a lot to assist her with. But Helen works part-time and spends time with her friends during the day, so she's not home much, right? I countered. Even if Mom isn't home, you could still handle the housework, couldn't you? Jackson's words left me baffled. What is he saying? Am I supposed to be her maid? I thought to myself. Jackson seems to be very concerned about appearances, especially in front of his parents. If he's so determined to care for them, he should handle the household chores himself. I wasn't interested in indulging Jackson's pride, so I didn't quit my job and avoided visiting my in-laws on my days off. However, I did make sure to visit them during holidays like New Year's. Thinking back, Jackson often assigned me tasks whenever we visited my in-laws together. He'd ask me to clean up, assist his mom, check if anything was needed from the store, and so on. But I never acted on these requests. When he asked me to go to the store, I'd respond with, "Don't you know more about this area than I do?" He'd then say, "It wouldn't make sense if I did it." I didn't really understand his reasoning. It seemed like he just wanted to control me and feel good about taking care of his parents, didn't it? Over time, that's how I started to view Jackson. Could it be that he's more concerned with appearances than genuinely caring for me? When I boldly asked him, "Why didn't you pitch in or quit your job to care for your own mother?" he appeared extremely uncomfortable and had a disgusted expression on his face. "That's not something I'm supposed to do. I'm giving you these instructions so that my mom will think that you are a considerate, useful wife. I hope you realize how kind I am to you," he said. In other words, he wants to dump all the difficult tasks on his wife and show off how good he is as if it's something remarkable. Well, I'm not his servant or slave, and I don't deserve to be treated disrespectfully in front of my in-laws. If Jackson continues making unreasonable demands, I won't stay silent. I'll stand up for myself. But despite talking to him, Jackson hasn't changed. He still asks, "Are you going to quit your job?" And whenever we visit my in-laws, he orders me around just like before. I had enough and decided it was time to discuss it with him seriously. "I think we need to talk about our future," I said. "What are you even trying to say?" Jackson replied, sounding annoyed. "I'm honestly fed up. I'm tired of you constantly asking me when I'll quit my job and exhausted from you pressuring me to take care of Helen," I explained. "Why are you fed up with that? You're my wife and it's your duty to care for your husband's parents," Jackson said. "Don't you think that's a huge responsibility for me? Shouldn't you, as their biological child, be responsible for helping with the housework and taking care of your own parents in the first place?" I asked. "No way, it's the wife's duty to do it. Are you the kind of person who doesn't care about family?" "I'm really disappointed to hear you say that," Jackson responded. "Then let me ask you this, how have you been taking care of my parents?" "If I asked you to care for my parents, would you do it then?" I questioned. Jackson stared at me blankly. "What are you saying? Why should a husband take care of his wife's parents? So does that mean you won't take care of my parents now or ever?" I pressed. "The husband's parents and wife's parents are completely different," Jackson replied. "What difference does that make, anyway? I don't get it," I said, feeling frustrated. "I didn't realize you were so clueless. It's like talking to my old boss," I continued. "What are you saying?" Jackson asked, confused. "I'm saying the husband's parents should come first. You should take care of your wife's parents," I clarified. "What?" I exclaimed. "So you only prioritize your own blood-related family? I'm so disappointed in you. I won't be visiting your parents anymore." "Ha, why would you do that? Enough is enough. I'm the one who wants you to stop this nonsense," I retorted. "No way, how dare you talk back like that? My mom is right," Jackson shot back. "Ha, Mom was talking about you. She said you're a badly behaved wife. That's why she gave me this." With that, Jackson pulled out a piece of paper from his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You already had divorce papers ready?" I was shocked, but Jackson seemed strangely proud. "See? I scared you, didn't I? I'm prepared for this anytime, so think about what you just said," Jackson declared smugly before leaving for his room. Unbelievable. Why is Jackson so selfish? That look of triumph on his face. It's clear the divorce papers are a threat to make me obey him. The fact that Helen was involved made me even more suspicious. Jackson is acting like a puppet for his mom, trying to control me while following her orders. It's ridiculous. I won't let Jackson have his way. How can he not see our marriage is in trouble when he acts like this? His lack of understanding just annoys me more. Jackson had already completed the divorce papers and handed them to me with witnesses, including Helen and his friends. This meant I could sign and file them whenever I chose. The next day, after Jackson went to work, I filled out the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. As a precaution, I also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate. I called my parents and explained the situation, knowing Jackson might threaten to file a marriage certificate on his own if he found out. My parents were shocked that I had already prepared the divorce papers but fully supported my decision. Outraged by Jackson's behavior, they offered to help me move my belongings immediately. Taking a leave from work, I had my parents come over and relocate all my things to their house while Jackson was away. I decided to stay with my parents for a while. It was the first time in a long time that I felt truly comfortable and at ease in their home. Reflecting back, Jackson never did his share of housework. I was the one cooking dinner after long work days and handling all the cleaning and laundry on my days off. On top of that, he expected me to care for his parents, which was impossible. That night, Jackson called me, probably just back from work. "Hello? Hey, where are you right now?" "I'm at my parents' house." "Oh, why would you go back there without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying the night." I almost laughed. How could he think I was staying when I had taken most of my belongings with me? It showed his selfishness to even suggest that I move out of the house. "I'm not coming back," I said firmly. "What are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food." "Make it yourself," I replied, ending the call. I couldn't discuss divorce with him if he continued to behave this way. I decided to wait for him to come to my parents' house and blocked his number. A week later, Jackson showed up at my parents' house, accompanied by his parents. They all wore serious expressions. I led them into the living room, and we faced each other, 3 against 3. "How could you do this? How could you leave without my permission?" Jackson demanded. "Well, you were treating me like a housekeeper. All I asked you to do was take care of your family," I countered. "That's not true. What kind of wife are you if you don't take care of Jackson?" Helen shot me a fierce glare. My father began to tremble with anger, but I interjected. "Jackson told me to quit my job and care for Helen, saying it was my duty as his wife. Yet, when it comes to my family, he expects me to handle everything alone. Ultimately, Jackson wants obedience and uses me to care for his parents while taking credit for it. That's why he prioritizes his parents over mine." "Have you heard Jackson say these things?" Helen continued to glare, but Carter looked confused, indicating he hadn't heard this before. "Let's clear the air," Jackson said suddenly, bringing up the divorce papers and claiming it was Helen's idea. "Why would you suggest that?" Carter asked, clearly surprised. "Oh no, it's because Camilla has an attitude problem," Helen stammered. "And did you really say that Camilla's parents aren't a priority?" I pressed. "Well, it's only natural that your own parents come first," Helen retorted defensively. "Don't be absurd. I came here to support you after hearing about the unfair treatment Camilla endured, but now it seems you're the one at fault." "Don't hide behind your parents' authority to get your way," Carter said, making Jackson visibly shrink in his seat. Carter then apologized to me and my parents. "I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused by my foolish son. I will have a serious talk with him." "Carter, you're not to blame at all, so please don't apologize," I replied. "Thank you for your kind words, but there's something else I need to say." Turning to Jackson, who was now nervous, I said, "The divorce papers you gave me, I've already filed them. We're no longer married." Jackson and Helen both turned pale. "Why did you file them without my permission?" Jackson demanded, shocked. "You told me I could file them whenever I wanted. Besides, you had already filled out your part and had Helen sign as a witness," I calmly explained. "Oh, that was," Jackson stammered, clearly at a loss for words. Carter, furious, intervened. "Jackson, you used divorce as a threat." He slapped Jackson across the face. Helen was visibly shaken by the confrontation. "I apologize deeply that you had to witness this. You're right to divorce this fool." "On behalf of Jackson, I'm truly sorry for ruining your marriage," Carter said, grasping Jackson by the collar and demanding apologies from both Jackson and Helen before escorting them out of the house. Later, I thanked Carter for his intervention. He ensured that all of Jackson's assets and property were transferred to me without any hassle. Despite my higher income and managing our household, it was a relief to secure everything from our marriage. I later learned that Carter had divorced Helen, clearly disgusted with her actions. The other day, I ran into a colleague from Jackson's old workplace who shared some surprising news. Jackson wasn't performing well at his job and often received harsh criticism from his boss. In defiance, Jackson resigned and changed jobs. This only added to my frustration with him. Instead of taking responsibility for his shortcomings, he blamed others, which likely contributed to his lower pay at the new job. I'm relieved to have left him. I've rented a cozy apartment and enjoy living independently. Work is going smoothly, and I even received a recent raise. Right now, I'm not interested in relationships and prefer focusing on my career. Jackson always cared more about appearances than actual abilities. He maintained a facade at home but failed to improve professionally. Sadly, many husbands use divorce threats as leverage, thinking they're powerful, but it's a big mistake. I hope they realize their folly and find happiness alone. Meanwhile, I'm grateful to have moved on from Jackson and look forward to meeting someone special in the future. You're still here? You reek of old age. Go home already." This harsh outburst came from our oldest son's wife during their housewarming party. My husband and I had come to celebrate our son's new home and were shocked by her audacity. Our son stood up, probably trying to calm his wife down, but beside me, my husband quietly muttered, "Shall we bring this house down?" At his words, our daughter-in-law's arrogant smile turned into a surprised gasp. Little did she know at the time that it wasn't just the house that was at stake, but her entire life as well. My name is Jacqueline Green. I'm 64 years old. I married my husband Sam and moved into his family home, where we lived a contented life. We were blessed with 2 sons, Robert and Ted, both of whom have grown up, have families of their own, and are doing well. As for Sam and me, all we want is to live out our remaining years in peace and happiness. However, there's one little thing that bothers us. It's our oldest son's wife, Alice. From the moment I first met her, I didn't have a good impression. Alice was 24 when she first came over to introduce herself before marrying our son. Although she greeted us at the door with a hello, there was no smile on her face. "Let me see, you're Alice, right?" Since she hadn't introduced herself, I asked my son just to be sure. At my question, Alice scowled. "What, does Robert have other women?" Both Robert and I were taken aback. "What are you talking about?" "Of course not," Robert hastily reassured her. "Well then, why did you need to confirm my name?" Alice started to argue right there on the doorstep. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." I nervously tried to calm the situation. Even though she was young, I couldn't help but think she lacked common sense, but hoped that time in marriage would improve things. That's what I thought at the time. Both families met, and everything proceeded smoothly. Alice's parents seemed like very nice people. They run a small electrical shop together, and they gave off a good vibe. I thought positively that Alice's initial behavior was perhaps due to her love for Robert. After their wedding, the couple moved to an apartment nearby. A few years later, our younger son Ted also decided to get married. It was a bit of a shotgun wedding. Ted was still in college, and his bride-to-be, Megan, was 20 and working from home after finishing high school. Honestly, we were worried. We had no idea what kind of girl was going to come into our lives, but when we first met Megan, she came with a gift and introduced herself politely at the door. I was surprised. Although we had thought that Alice's behavior was due to her youth, Megan, who was even younger, was very polite and respectful. There were some concerns about how their relationship began, but Megan seemed like a wonderful and kind girl. In the time leading up to their wedding, Megan visited us many times. She always offered to help out around the house. Of course, we couldn't let her do that, but we were incredibly touched by her thoughtfulness. The second son's wife's family owned a small construction company. Ted, who was still in college, decided to drop out and start working there. Then a beautiful baby girl was born to the couple. When the baby turned 6 months old, they decided to hold a belated wedding ceremony. Of course, the eldest son and his wife attended the ceremony. However, Alice looked sullen the whole time. Despite being a part of the family, she was constantly on her phone, never leaving her seat. Both my husband and I wanted to talk to her, but we could tell she gave off a vibe that said, "Don't talk to me." The wedding ceremony went smoothly, but the problem arose after that. Since they had a small baby, they decided not to have an after-party, so we suggested, why not have a small after-party at our house? Ted and Megan were thrilled. We prepared snacks and appetizers, and Robert and Alice joined us at our house. However, a commotion ensued. That was a lovely wedding. "Megan looked beautiful," said the eldest son. Of course, those kind words made the atmosphere pleasant, but it was the eldest son's wife who completely shattered the calm. "What are you saying? Who are you calling beautiful? Are you cheating on me?" she angrily confronted her husband. Everyone was stunned by her overreaction, but I quickly snapped out of it and tried to calm her down. "Alice, calm down. Robert didn't mean it that way." But it seemed like that was a mistake. Now I became the target of her anger. Alice glared at me and shouted, "How did you raise him to be such a cheater? Isn't it your fault for raising him this way?" Then she lunged at me. "Alice, calm down. Alice, please stop. Enough is enough." The children and my husband stepped in to restrain Alice. I immediately told Megan to take the baby somewhere safe and asked her to leave the room. Looking at Alice, who was panting heavily from her outburst, I was sure she must dislike all of us. No, everyone involved with Robert. She sees only Robert. For better or worse, we decided it would be better for Robert's sake to distance ourselves from them, and so we have kept a minimal relationship with them up to now. After the incident, I told Robert, "Don't you think it might be better to divorce?" To which he replied, "I have thought about that too," but when I mentioned it, Alice apologized in tears. After receiving words of apology from her, both my husband and I decided to leave the matter to the two of them. Despite the ups and downs, our eldest son and his wife celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Since they didn't have children, we didn't have many opportunities to meet with our eldest son and his wife, but we figured it was better to go on without any confrontations causing issues. Both my husband and I thought the same. Then one day, our eldest son contacted us. He said that he had decided to start his own business, focusing on the development of a game he had been working on as a hobby. In other words, our eldest son was going to be the CDO. He said he didn't need a large office to develop his game, but he would hire a few employees and each of them would work from home. Because there would occasionally be a need for meetings, he told us he was planning to build a new house with a small meeting room and his own workspace. My husband and I were very happy to hear that our eldest son was turning his hobby into his career and looking toward the future. A few months later, a mansion was completed. We were invited to the housewarming party along with our second son's family. It had been several years since we last met our eldest son's wife, but she had become a fine adult. I thought there wouldn't be any problems like before. Thinking that, we brought our congratulations and visited our eldest son's home. "Hello, excuse us," I said as I rang the bell. My eldest son came out to greet us. He guided us inside the house, saying, "This is the conference room, this is the workspace, and this is the living area. It's properly locked." He led us to the living room while showing us around the house. "Oh, it's lovely," I said, looking around the room with my husband and the family of our second son following behind, all wearing smiles. A meal was prepared in the living room, but I didn't see my eldest son's wife. "Where is Alice?" I asked my eldest son, but he didn't want to talk about her. In the end, we started eating without her. My husband and second son each gave their housewarming gifts to our eldest son. "You didn't have to do all this," my eldest son said, grateful but accepting the gifts with thanks, acknowledging the celebration. The second son's family had one more child since then, and the older child was already in elementary school while the younger child was still 2 years old. Both of them were excited about the new house. That's when it happened. There was a noise upstairs, followed by the sound of footsteps and someone coming down the stairs. "What? Alice is here," I called out to my eldest son, but he didn't answer. Then, when she entered the living room, she frowned upon seeing us. "Alice, hello, it's been a while," I called out to her, but she was still looking sullen as usual. Then she said to us, "You're still here? You reek of old age. Go home already." Alice's harsh words froze the warm atmosphere in the room. "Hey, Alice, how can you say such a thing?" Robert chastised his wife, but it was clear Alice had no intention of taking his reprimand to heart. "Well, it's the truth, isn't it? Our brand new house is getting ruined because of them. I told you not to invite them over, and what are you, some big shot CEO now? Hanging around with some old codger who keeps working past retirement and people who are so average they had a shotgun wedding after dropping out of college. We live in completely different worlds." I was speechless, and so was my second son's family. Even my grade school grandchild was struck dumb in surprise. I had made various excuses attributing her behavior to her youth or excessive affection for my eldest son, but that was my mistake. Something essential to her humanity is missing. She lacks warmth and kindness towards others. It's not that she loves my eldest son the most. She loves herself above all else and values her status as the wife of a company president more than anything. I was furious. I couldn't stand silent anymore. As I was about to retort, my husband, who had been listening to the argument between my eldest son and his wife, let out a sigh. Usually calm and gentle, he said, "Maybe we should just tear this house down." At my husband's words, my eldest son, second son's family, and I involuntarily looked at him. Nobody could believe that such words had come out of his mouth. Only my eldest son's wife let out a surprised gasp. "What? Do you even understand what you're saying?" Alice asked. "Of course I do," my husband replied. "A house designed by me and built by Ted might be better off not existing." Alice was stunned at my husband's words. "I'm sure you, as the president's wife, wouldn't be satisfied with such a house designed by an old man and built by someone beneath ordinary. Our worlds are different. You should just move out." My husband's calm tone was ironically scary. Knowing this, none of us could interrupt the conversation between him and Alice. "What do you mean?" Alice started to tremble at his words and she glared at my eldest son. Noticing her gaze, my eldest son sighed and said to Alice, "It means exactly what he says. This house was designed by my father, a top architect, and the contractor is Megan's family's firm, with the foreman being Ted. I may hold a title and be a president, but I neither have substantial wealth nor reputation yet. Thanks to my family, I could own such a wonderful house rather among us. I know we are the most ordinary or even beneath ordinary." Alice turned pale at my eldest son's words. She must not have known, but even if she didn't know, didn't she ever wonder? There's no way our eldest son's income and savings alone could have built such an impressive house. My husband didn't even charge for the design work, and there's hardly any profit for our second son's in-laws who run a construction company. I can't thank enough to our second son's in-laws who helped us simply because we're family. Yet our eldest son's wife has the audacity to act pompous just because of her husband's status. Who does she think she is, saying that we're less than average? Alice repeated his words as if she couldn't believe them. You could see the despair on her face. Indeed, my husband still works for a company even after his retirement, but that's because the company asked him to stay on as a top-tier architect. Our second son is being groomed as the next boss at his wife's family business. He gets good treatment not just from his coworkers but also from the business partners that his wife's family has had relationships with for years. And even though he's not yet the president, he's working hard for the company. Yet in this group, Alice is at the bottom of the barrel. Our eldest son laughed, looking at his wife, whose face had turned blue as if she was about to cry at any moment. Our second son also started laughing involuntarily, but the atmosphere was anything but pleasant. Our second son's wife quickly picked up on the mood and took their child to a nearby dollar store. She's really good at reading the room and is very considerate. Apologize to Dad and Mom properly if you understand. Our eldest son stopped laughing and yelled at his wife. What? Am I really that bad? You're always on their side. It's only natural for a husband to side with his wife. Alice fought back. Sure, that's right, but it's also a husband's job to point out when his wife is wrong. You're wrong. If you have a complaint, quit being my wife right now, our eldest son replied, truly angry. Seeing her husband so angry, Alice quickly changed her attitude and conspicuously knelt down. I didn't know. You never told me, she said, acting like a tragic heroine. Then, as if intoxicated by her own performance, she turned to my husband and me and began to apologize. I'm really sorry for the rude things I've said. We watched her act with a blank expression, not feeling a shred of sympathy. Her overly dramatic apology didn't touch our hearts at all, and it was too late to apologize anyway. We had no intention of accepting her superficial apology, just like last time. Seeing his wife in this state, our eldest son asked, Dad, Mom, what do you think? Am I terrible? Am I doing something wrong? My husband looked at me, realizing that I had something to say. I couldn't forgive her for her previous remarks, no matter what. No, Robert, I think you're right. If a wife disrespects her family, it's a husband's duty to correct her. I will reflect and change my attitude. Alice continued her melodramatic act. No, Alice, this is not the first time you've been disrespectful to us, is it? Haven't you been told this every time by Robert? Robert must have pointed out your words every time, right? What about that? I asked. At my words, Alice bit her lip, turning pale. I don't meet someone who belittles my husband and son in the Green family. It would be better for both of us to cut ties, I said. Jacqueline, she cried out in a desperate voice. In our 15 years of marriage, it was the first time she called my name. We live in different worlds. I threw her words back at her. At those words, Alice collapsed on the spot and froze as if her spirit had left her body. She might be regretting her actions a little bit. Being told that we live in different worlds must have been a significant blow to Alice, even though they were her own words. Although I thought that, my second son said, Mom, you were really cool. It seemed to be quite a shocking remark for Alice. In the end, my eldest son Robert decided to divorce his wife Alice, who loved Robert so much. When Robert proposed, if you want to stay with me, Alice, you need to start working and contribute to the mortgage for this house we got at a reduced rate, Alice turned bright red with anger. At the time of their marriage, Robert had told her, I want my wife to be a homemaker.
Late at night, my 9-year-old grandson showed up at our doorstep unexpectedly. I rushed to open the door and found him barefoot, with blood oozing from his toes. He was tightly holding the hand of his 4-year-old sister, whose face was streaked with tears. Did you two really walk here all by yourselves? I asked in disbelief. They nodded, and I quickly ushered them inside. However, when my husband woke up, he was furious. Absolutely not, he yelled, his terrifying expression making the grandchildren burst into tears. I was bewildered. Surely they could have stayed for just one night. But then I couldn't believe what my husband did next. My name is Margaret. I'm a 63-year-old homemaker living with my husband Patrick, who is 2 years older than me. He worked as a high school teacher until he retired at 60. We have 2 children who are married and independent. Our daughter Laura lives in a nearby apartment while our son Richard lives in the neighboring town. Richard's wife, Victoria, is stunningly beautiful, with translucent white skin and big eyes that make anyone falter under her gaze. She's an ideal daughter-in-law as long as she remains silent. However, she has a sharp tongue. Everyone wonders why a woman of my caliber would marry a man like him, she often boasts. Are you saying Richard isn't up to your standard? I once asked. Well, he works for a top-tier company and earns a decent income, but let's be honest, he's not that good-looking. But I'm not that picky, so he's lucky, I guess. I felt very angry hearing her speak ill of my son. Who does she think she is? I wanted to say something, but I held my tongue to avoid a confrontation. However, my husband couldn't remain silent. Richard sure married quite an impressive wife, didn't he? He remarked sarcastically. Victoria seemed unfazed and smirked dismissively. Richard, in response, could only manage a wry smile. Victoria is too good for me. Seeing this, I imagined my kind-hearted son must be facing some challenges in his marriage. Despite their differences, they had a child together. Daniel, our first grandchild, resembled his mother, with a remarkably beautiful face, yet inherited his father's kind personality, a perfect blend of both parents' best qualities. I always looked forward to Richard bringing Daniel over to our house. Victoria rarely visited, which might have been for the best. 5 years later, we welcomed a granddaughter, Emily. She was an adorable girl with fair skin, chubby cheeks, and round eyes. However, when I visited my son's home to celebrate her birth, Victoria disdainfully glared at the newborn. Daniel takes after me and is beautiful, but why is this one so chubby and ugly? Who does she even resemble? She's not cute at all. You're a mother. Don't say such things. She's perfectly cute just as she is, I retorted. I can say whatever I want about my own child. Are you trying to start trouble with me? I won't lose to an old hag like you. As my husband heard this exchange beside me, his expression changed. I could tell he was about to shout in my defense, so I quickly intervened. Instead, it was our son who raised his voice in anger. Victoria, enough. Mom and Dad came here to celebrate. There's a limit to how rude you can be. Oh, how unusual for you to stand up to me, she sneered, glaring sharply at Richard, as if ready to strike. I quickly relented. I'm sorry, Victoria. You've just given birth, and it's a stressful time. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. Please forgive me. Humph, exactly. You shouldn't have said anything. You could have just sent a gift instead of coming all the way here, Victoria replied, her demeanor consistently lacking manners. I couldn't say anything further. Because of incidents like these, we grew distant. Despite this, Richard continued to bring Daniel and Emily over regularly, which made us happy. However, there were still some concerns on my mind. Daniel was bright and talkative, but Emily, even at ages 3 and 4, showed hardly any signs of speaking. Furthermore, her once fair skin had turned extremely dark from sunburn, and her hands were rough and dry. When I asked Richard about Emily's condition, he said, Victoria claims Emily loves playing in the garden. But the state of our granddaughter's skin was still extremely concerning. Then one day, our family was struck by tragedy. Richard suddenly passed away. He fell from the stairs of a pedestrian bridge during his commute. Though he was rushed to the hospital and received intensive treatment, he didn't make it. I was in such shock that I could hardly stand. Richard, you poor thing. It must have been painful, I murmured as tears streamed down my face. Daniel cried uncontrollably, shouting, Daddy, Daddy, what's wrong? Wake up, meanwhile. Emily stood expressionless, biting her lip. Victoria, without shedding a tear, continued to fiddle with her phone. Looking back, it was a peculiar scene, but at that moment, I was too overwhelmed with grief to notice anything else. My husband received Richard's old, worn-out bag from the paramedics, which had been found beneath the pedestrian bridge. It was the bag I had bought him when he first started working. He'd been saving and working hard for his family, and thinking about this made everything even harder to bear. The wake and funeral were mainly organized by our daughter's husband and were carried out smoothly. I spent the entire time in a daze at home. Then, the night after the funeral, the intercom rang. Wondering what was happening, I looked at the camera and saw Daniel's face, biting his lip. I hurriedly opened the door and let him in. Holding back his tears, Daniel managed to speak in a shaky voice. Mom told us to leave. Can we stay just for tonight? My grandson was barefoot, and blood was oozing from his toes. Did you two walk here all by yourselves? I asked, horrified. The grandchildren nodded, but it was a 10-minute drive from the neighboring town. While 9-year-old Daniel might manage the walk, Emily was only 4 years old. Besides, it was the middle of the night. They must have been terrified. As I let them into the living room, my husband awoke. I consulted my husband about Daniel's request to stay just for the night. "Grandpa, we'll leave tomorrow." "Please?" Daniel pleaded. "Absolutely not," my husband replied, his brow furrowed with worry. Upon seeing his stern expression, the grandchildren burst into tears, and I was wide-eyed with surprise. "Can't we at least let them stay for one night?" I began to plead, but then my husband hugged the children tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. Even during our son's funeral, he had held back tears. We had been married for 30 years, yet this was the first time I had seen him cry like this. "Don't say just for today. Stay here forever, poor things," he said through his tears. His words revealed the depth of his feelings, and I couldn't stop crying either. Later, I asked the grandchildren what had happened, and what they shared was shocking. Victoria, who was supposed to be a homemaker, was often out during the day, leaving the children home alone. Even when she was home, she would frequently scold and roughly push Emily around for various reasons. Whenever Emily cried, Victoria would shout angrily, "Shut up. Be quiet. You're annoying." Over time, Emily learned to cry silently without making a sound. Daniel said he was often scolded too when he tried to defend his younger sister. He felt sorry for Emily, who didn't have the option of escaping their mother's behavior by going to school like he did. Emily wasn't allowed to attend kindergarten. Apparently, while her mother was around, Emily would go outside to weed the garden every day. This was her way to avoid being scolded and perhaps earn some praise from Victoria. This explained why her skin was deeply tanned and her hands were rough. Emily's inability to speak might stem from a fear of being scolded. Thinking about this filled me with a sense of helplessness. That evening, Victoria had apparently told them that guests were coming and ordered them to go outside. Daniel managed to put on his shoes, but Emily couldn't make it in time and was left barefoot. Victoria quickly locked the front door behind them. Daniel then put his shoes on Emily's feet and held her hand as they walked to our house to seek help. "What a terrible thing to do," I said, shaking my head. "Unbelievable." I tried calling my daughter-in-law several times but couldn't reach her. Since it was late, I decided to sleep with my grandchildren that night. However, early in the morning, Daniel woke me up. "Grandma, I'm sorry for waking you up," he said. "Emily said she saw Dad in her dream." "Huh? Did she?" "Yes. Dad told Emily to look inside the bag." I was taken aback by what he said, but looking at Daniel's serious expression, I started to wonder if there was something more to it. I woke up my husband and told him what Daniel had said. Still groggy, my husband was skeptical at first, but when he checked our son's bag, he exclaimed in surprise, "No way. This is outrageous. I can't forgive this." Filled with anger, we decided to take action. We quickly called our eldest daughter, Laura, who lives nearby, and asked her to come over to take care of the grandchildren. Meanwhile, my husband and I rushed to our son's house and rang the doorbell repeatedly, but no one answered. We continued to ring the doorbell persistently until my daughter-in-law finally appeared in her pajamas, looking disheveled with her collar open. "Geez, so noisy. Who the hell is it?" she snapped. At that moment, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a young man with brown hair crossing the back of the room, completely naked. I knew it. However, as soon as my daughter-in-law realized it was us, she widened her eyes and quickly shut the door. "It's so rude of you to come here suddenly. Go home," she shouted aggressively from behind the door. "We have something urgent to discuss. Please open the door," I insisted. "I can't open it right now," she replied. Reluctantly, I opened the door with the key. Inside my son's bag, I found shocking evidence. As I rummaged through it, the young man from earlier exclaimed, "Oh no, run." He hurriedly dressed and fled from the house. At the entrance, Victoria stood defiantly, glaring at me and my husband without a trace of remorse. "What the heck are you doing here? Are you already cheating on your husband the day after he passed away? Don't be ridiculous." "Oh, he's just a gas repairman," she said, trying to dismiss my accusation. "Huh, so gas repairmen these days work without clothes on," I replied sarcastically. Victoria noticed my sarcasm and clicked her tongue in annoyance. She may have a beautiful face, but her ugly character shows through in her expression. "Richard is gone now, and I'm done with you both. You have no right to say anything. Just leave." At that moment, my husband, his face flushed red with anger, deliberately asked her, "I can't see the grandchildren." Where are they? He pretended to search around the house. Victoria seemed momentarily at a loss for words, but quickly started shouting angrily at me. They went to a friend's house. What's wrong with that? Stop lying. Were you not worried when a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old were gone all night? Are you even a mother? Huh? How do you know about that? They walked all the way to our house late at night. As I told this to her, she looked puzzled and astonished, then shamelessly responded with a brazen attitude. Our daughter isn't cute at all. And the son I raised lovingly rebels against me. I don't need those brats. You can take them, but give me money. I want $100,000. It's not much, right? She truly was the worst kind of woman. I felt boiling anger at the thought that my son and grandchildren had suffered because of such a woman. Too bad you can't spend money behind bars. I've recorded our entire conversation, I said, revealing my phone. Ha, you're so naive. I'll be released soon enough just for being a little harsh with the children. It's not just about the children. You do realize that taking someone's life is a serious crime, don't you? And there's evidence. Actually, Richard's diary was in the bag. From Victoria's frequent outings, he suspected she was having an affair. On top of that, there was a report from a detective Richard had hired to investigate. According to it, his wife was indeed cheating with a young man she had met at a pub, the same man who fled from the house. Additionally, the diary mentioned, I've been feeling my life is in danger. It seems Richard had experienced several incidents where he narrowly avoided accidents, such as almost being hit by a car while walking or nearly being pushed onto train tracks while on a platform. He suspected his wife was targeting him and had taken precautions and was preparing for divorce. That might prove my affair, but it doesn't prove I killed Richard. It's just the ramblings of old people. The police have more important things to do. Can you still say that after hearing this? I argued. My husband appeared holding a surveillance camera he had found. The day before Richard passed away, he had installed a surveillance camera in the living room, as noted in his diary. Upon playing the recording, we heard a conversation between Victoria and the young man. It went well this time. I pushed your husband hard down the stairs. Thank you. Now we'll get a hefty life insurance payout. Victoria turned pale, her lips trembling uncontrollably. I had just said that as a joke. How far can you go with your lies? I'll bring all the evidence to the police and request a reinvestigation. Your affair partner might spill everything about you during questioning. Oh, by the way, Laura mentioned something. The place where Richard fell is a busy pedestrian bridge, and many cars nowadays have cameras installed. Laura suggested spreading the word on social media to see if there were any witnesses. At that time, Victoria's eyes widened and she looked visibly shaken, placing a hand over her mouth. However, she quickly changed her tone and began to apologize. I'm sorry. I was threatened by that man. I'll give you half of the $100,000 life insurance payout if you overlook this. Excuse me? You're not the beneficiary. That can't be true. We made each other beneficiaries when we got married. I told her that, according to Richard's diary, the beneficiary had been changed from her to Daniel. Richard had set up a trust system that allowed his children to receive the benefits once they reached a certain age, regardless of their current age. That's ridiculous. It was a plan to get a large sum of money. She collapsed on the spot, crying and screaming like a child, utterly miserable. We watched her coldly in silence. Afterward, both she and her lover were arrested. Taking someone's life is a serious crime, and they are unlikely to be free for a long time. Even if they were to leave prison, no one would want anything to do with them. Currently, my grandchildren live with me. In fact, my daughter and her husband also live with us, supporting us and lovingly caring for the 2 children as if they were their own. Emily, who used to be quiet, has started to open up and gradually began to talk more. I am determined to stay strong and see these children's happiness through until the end. I'm really sorry. It's okay, take your time and tell me slowly, I said gently as my niece fought back tears. Despite her distress, I encouraged her softly, trying to offer comfort. Before she could say anything more, she pulled an audio recording from her pocket and played it. I was stunned by the voice I heard, cursing my own ignorance. The situation was far more tragic and difficult than I had realized. Overwhelmed by the revelation, I broke down in tears and steeled myself for what was to come. Let me introduce myself. I'm Kathy. I work at an IT company where I hold a responsible position and earn a decent living. Although I could afford to live on my own, I stay with my parents since my workplace is close by and I can work remotely. I contribute financially to the household, and my parents prefer my company as they would otherwise feel lonely. I have an older sister who is 2 years my senior. She used to be happily married to a kind man, and they had a daughter named Susan. However, her husband passed away from an illness 3 years ago. At his funeral, I saw how exhausted my sister was and suggested, "Why don't we come back home until things settle down? You have Susan to think about too." "Thank you for worrying, Kathy, but I'll be fine," she replied. She refused to return home, and though I found it odd, I attributed it to her strong-willed nature and her reluctance to lean on our parents. She continued working and raising Susan as a single mother. Despite the increasing burden, she assured me she was managing. A year ago, my sister fell ill and passed away. We took Susan, who was still in elementary school, into our home. Since moving in with us, Susan seemed unusually withdrawn. I remembered her as a lively and cheerful girl when her parents were alive, and I knew losing both parents so quickly must have been a heavy blow. I wanted to help her regain her spark. My parents tried talking to her, but she remained unresponsive. I suggested outings on my days off, but she showed no interest. Not wanting to push her too hard, I held back. 3 months later, Susan suddenly started apologizing, crying when my parents weren't around. "Kathy, I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "What happened? Did something bother you?" I asked, confused. "No, it's not that. I'm just sorry," she repeated, her tears a complete surprise to me. She wouldn't explain why she was crying, only apologizing, and she always managed to keep it hidden from my parents. This only fueled my curiosity further. Another puzzling issue was my parents' frequent trips over the past few years. While occasional travel was fine, I couldn't understand how they could afford it on my contributions and their modest pensions. My father had been a manager at a small company and after retiring hadn't worked. My mother had been a housewife. Despite my efforts to manage most of the household chores, they seemed to be spending more than they should. "Mom, Dad, it's okay to travel sometimes, but please save some money. You don't need to keep saying you're careful with your spending. I've worked hard for you all these years, and we don't have much time left," I said, trying to be considerate. "Stop meddling in our affairs. We just want to enjoy ourselves," they retorted. I was exasperated. Whenever they went on trips, Susan seemed like she wanted to share something but never did. I decided to wait until she was ready to talk. A few months later, my father approached me, looking pleased. "Kathy," he said, "your mother and I are going on a week-long overseas trip soon." "An overseas trip? How can you afford it? I just told you to save money." I protested. "We came into a bit of money," my father replied dismissively. "From where?" I asked, but he waved my question away. "Does it matter? We want to make some memories in our old age. Your mother and I deserve this experience." "All right, fine," I said, though I couldn't shake the suspicion about their sudden windfall. I decided not to push further, thinking it was their money after all. "Take care of things at home while we're gone," they instructed. "Got it. Have a safe trip," I replied, trying to mask my concern. On the day of their trip, my parents left cheerfully, promising to bring back souvenirs. After seeing them off, I turned back to the living room and found my niece, Susan, standing there, looking as if she were on the verge of tears. Recognizing that something needed to be done, I decided to confront her. "Susan, what's the matter? Your grandparents have left for their trip. It's just the two of us now. Please take your time and tell me what's wrong." "I'm sorry," she said, beginning to cry again. I gently urged her to open up. "Actually," she said, pulling out her smartphone and pressing play, "I need to show you something." The recording that played was filled with my parents' angry voices. I was stunned. No matter how I listened, it was unmistakably their voices, though they had never spoken to me like this before. "Is this really Grandpa and Grandma?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes," Susan confirmed, her voice trembling. "They often came over when my parents were still alive. They used to nag and complain a lot, especially about my parents' marriage and making irrational demands for money, claiming it was compensation for taking their daughter away." I was horrified. I had no idea they were like that. I thought they were just visiting to see their granddaughter. Susan continued, "They would threaten my parents under the guise of visits, extorting money every time they came. I would hide in my room whenever they were here because they were always yelling at my parents. I see, I said, feeling a pang of guilt. That must have been really tough. But how did you manage to record this? Susan explained that she had been given an old smartphone of her parents as a toy, and she happened to use it during one of those visits, capturing their angry outbursts. I was grateful for her bravery in recording this evidence. How often do they come to your house? I asked, the question that had been bothering me. I think it was almost every week, Susan replied. To think they visited my sister's family so frequently without my knowledge was shocking. In hindsight, I remembered how my sister and her husband had appeared increasingly haggard each time I saw them. When I asked my sister if she was okay, she had said they were just dieting together, which I had taken at face value. But now I realized that the strain from my parents' demands must have been wearing them down. I cursed myself for not probing further. If I had noticed the signs sooner, this might not have happened. I'm sorry for keeping it hidden, Susan said through her tears. I was scared of what Grandpa and Grandma might do if I told you. I should have been more aware, I said, holding her close. I'll protect you from now on. But what if they come after you too? Susan asked, her voice trembling. Don't worry about me, I reassured her. I won't let them win. We'll face this together. Yes, if I'm with you, I'm not scared, Susan said, determination in her eyes. Seeing her resolve, I nodded. During the week my parents were away, Susan and I prepared. With her support, I felt even more determined. I remembered how frugal my sister and her husband had been. My sister had once told me they rarely carried cash, preferring bank transfers. If they had given money to my parents, it would have been through these transfers. I searched the house and eventually found what I was looking for. I discovered my parents' bank passbook, revealing the frequent deposits they received from my sister and her husband. It was clear they had been living frugally to cover these payments. Ripping the passbook, I trembled with anger. I decided to take it to a private investigator to uncover the full extent of my parents' dealings. A few days later, I was summoned to the investigator's office. Here is the report, the investigator said, handing me a folder. As I read through the report, my shock and anger deepened. It detailed how my brother-in-law had been borrowing money from financial institutions to pay my parents, which led to his mental exhaustion and eventual death. My sister had worked herself to the brink trying to repay these debts and meet my parents' constant demands. Additionally, my parents had mistreated Susan, claiming they were doing her a favor by letting her stay with them. The revelation was devastating. I started to cry, feeling a profound sense of betrayal. How could they do this without me knowing? I wondered aloud. Furthermore, the report revealed that my parents had even taken my brother-in-law's insurance money. You can't be serious, I said as I reviewed the additional documents confirming this. They must have used that money for their frequent trips. I thanked the investigator and returned home, determined to address this betrayal. Until my parents came back from their overseas trip, Susan and I finalized our plan. Do you think we can pull this off? I asked Susan. Don't worry, she said confidently. We still have time. Let's practice as much as we need. I'll do my best, I promised. We rehearsed our plan until Susan felt confident. A few days later, we were ready and waited for my parents to return. We had set up cameras around the house to capture everything on video and audio as evidence. I had discussed this with my lawyer and received approval. When my parents finally came home, they were full of excitement. We're home. Did you have a good time? I asked. Yes, it was great. We brought lots of souvenirs. Where's Susan? They replied. She's doing her homework in her room. You must be tired from your trip, so why don't you rest for a bit? I suggested. That sounds good. How about some tea? My mother asked. I'll make it, I offered. No, let me, my mother insisted. I always make your father's tea. All right, understood, I said, preparing to carry out the next steps of our plan. My parents seemed to have enjoyed their trip immensely, regaling me with stories when I returned. Oh, sorry, I need to step out for a bit, I said, taking an urgent work call. It happens sometimes. I'll be back soon. Take care, they responded, still buzzing from their travels. Once I was sure they had relaxed, I excused myself, signaling the start of our plan. After leaving the house, I called Susan. Hey, Susan, I've left the house. Got it, she replied, keeping our call connected as she went to confront my parents. Oh, welcome back, my parents greeted Susan. We brought back lots of souvenirs. Thank you, Susan said, but I need to talk to you. What is it? Speak up. Following my father's directive, Susan played the recorded audio. The shock on my parents' faces was immediate. Where did you get that? My father demanded. Susan, be a good girl and give that to me. My parents were visibly panicked. I was planning to let Kathy hear this, Susan said. Please don't do that, my mother pleaded. Do you know what will happen if you do? But this isn't right, Susan countered. We took you in when you had nowhere else to go, so you should listen to us. Yes, if it weren't for us, you wouldn't be getting any welfare benefits, my father added. Then why are you kind to Kathy? Susan pressed. My parents' anger flared. We're nice to her because she brings money into the house, they admitted. We're living off your father's pension now, so if Kathy leaves, we'll be in trouble. That's right, my mother continued. As long as she's around, she'll always give us money when we need it. She's a convenient fool. Hearing their true feelings was devastating. My anger reached its peak. I stormed back home, my mind racing. Bursting through the door, I shouted, "Oh, so this is how you really feel about me? You see me as nothing more than a cash cow and a housekeeper." Of course we're not working anymore, my father shot back. How else are we supposed to live on just a pension? That's right, my mother chimed in. We need your help to survive. They didn't deny their actions and shamelessly demanded more money. The thought of staying in this house under these conditions made me sick. If that's how you feel, I won't give you any more money, I said. I'm taking Susan and we're leaving. Don't contact us again. How will we live without you? They protested. I know everything, I said. I know you took money from my sister and brother-in-law. What are you talking about? My father asked, feigning ignorance. Did Susan tell you? My mother inquired. Yes, she did, I confirmed. We have all the evidence, so don't bother arguing. Susan went to pack her things, and I took her hand when she returned. We left the house and stayed at a hotel near my workplace, which I had arranged beforehand. A few days later, I found a new place for us to live. Shortly after we moved in, I received a call from the police. Is it true? I asked, bewildered. Yes, the officer confirmed. Your parents have been arrested for shoplifting. No way, I said, unable to believe it. I was only gone a few days. How could they have run out of money so quickly? Besides, they were getting welfare benefits for taking care of Susan. Reluctantly, I went to the police station. My parents, looking repentant, apologized. We just made a mistake, they said. I took them back to the house. The utilities, electricity, gas, and water had been cut off, and the house was in a terrible state. It reeked of filth, a testament to my mother's poor housekeeping. How did everything get cut off? Were you that broke? I asked, appalled. And what's with this mess? Of course we're broke, my father said. We were enjoying our retirement, but we can't manage housework anymore. You took Susan, so we stopped getting welfare. My pension isn't enough. If you had kept giving us money, we wouldn't have had to steal, my mother said bitterly. They angrily blamed me for their situation. I sighed in exasperation. This is your own fault. How many times did I tell you to save money? Yet you kept going on week-long trips every few months. Enough of that, they snapped. Just give us the money to pay for the utilities. We can't live here without them, and get a cleaning service. This place is uninhabitable. Their demands were relentless, and their blame shifted entirely onto me. I was beyond furious. I was simply fed up. All right, I said, my voice cold. You refuse to acknowledge your faults. In that case, I'm done. What? What are we supposed to acknowledge? My mother asked, bewildered. Fine, this is the last time I'll speak to you, I said. I'm cutting ties with you. Don't contact me again. I left the house, and a month later, it was vacant. The house, which was in my name, was sold, forcing my parents to leave. They had forgotten that detail. After some time, I went to apologize to the neighbors for any trouble caused. They informed me that loan sharks had been lurking around, indicating my parents had turned to them for money. Rumor had it they were seen in a park, looking disheveled. Eventually, I legally separated from my parents and adopted Susan as my daughter. Our bond grew stronger, and Susan's cheerful spirit returned. Our lives stabilized, and I vowed to continue watching over her and make my late sister proud. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.